In this unit, we're going to look at portraiture. And first, let's define the word portrait. A portrait is any type of artwork that represents a person, a group of people, or it could even be an animal. Usually you show what somebody looks like, but you're also revealing something a little bit about their personality. So this is actually a portrait done by Chuck Close, and it is not actually a photograph. It is photorealism. It's either a drawing or a painting that's done super large, but so a portrait does not necessarily mean it needs to be photography. It could be in any medium. The first word we're going to learn about is the 3/4 turn. This is a example of a 3/4 turn. So it's when a subject turns their head slightly to the right or to the left so that you can see both eyes, but you can also see the shape of somebody's cheekbones and their nose and the shape of their lips. A lot of times you'll see somebody in a portrait where their face is slightly turned, and that's because you want to be able to see a little bit more about their face or more of expression of who they are rather than just straight on. One of the most flattering types of lighting in photography is called paramount or butterfly lighting. This is light that comes straight from above and shoots down and to create a butterfly-like shape underneath the nose. Do you see that right here? This is where the word butterfly comes in. The cool thing about this type of lighting is that it creates a nice highlight on the nose and the cheekbones and the chin right here. And it also creates a shadow underneath the cheekbone line so that it is much more flattering. And it also creates a shadow underneath the chin, which is flattering to hide any kind of blemishes there. Next type of lighting is called split lighting. This is where you have light on one side of the face and not on the other side, so it's split in half. This is not a very flattering portraiture lighting to use, but it can be used for dramatic effects. Next is profile. Some photographers like to take profile pictures of people so they can see the shape of their face. You can also do this in silhouette. The next word is Rembrandt lighting. Rembrandt lighting is using light that comes from one direction above and to the right, so it shoots down in this direction, and then it casts a shadow on one eyebrow right here and the nose, and then this nose line connects with the cheek line to create an upside down triangle right here. So you know you have Rembrandt lighting when you've created this shadow right here, and then you have a triangle of light on the opposite cheek. Broad lighting is when you actually step back away from the subject, and it's, in this case, you can tell the light's coming from this direction, but it's more broad, so you can actually see the shadows on the other side of the, the opposite side of the face is not overshadowed by shadows. So you can see it is broad and basic, and it's giving enough light to the entire person's face. Headshot. Headshots are used and they're for photographs that are going to be submitted for to an agent or for casting in a job for any kind of entertainment. So if you're a performer of any sort, if you're an actor, a comedian, or if you play an instrument, you're always going to submit a headshot before they're going to look to see if they want to hire you or audition you for a job. So when I was first starting photography, I was actually hired to do a whole series of headshots for an actress who was up and coming and trying to get some jobs. And so typically they are shot in black and white. You're not usually smiling in the picture. It's more of a serious picture. Typically your head is not straight on. It's maybe slightly angled. It's asymmetrical, so it's not straight in the middle. And it's going to be kind of close too. So it's just going to be from the shoulders up, and then sometimes the head is cropped just like this. Basically, the person who is reviewing the image is looking to see if you would fit in the role. So it has to be a little bit dramatic with it too. An environmental portrait is a portrait, just like it says. It's typically a posed portrait of somebody in their workspace. So the person is typically looking at the camera. They're posed in their environment, which is suitable to who they are, and the lighting has been arranged and everything like that. So, for example, if you want to do a portrait of Mr. Moore, who's the principal of our school, you would arrange a time to meet with him and you would say, hey, can I take a picture of you inside of your office? You would bring your lighting. You would bring any kind of support or bounce light that you need, maybe a photo assistant, and you would arrange the picture and you would tell him where he should turn his head, how he should look. You would position the camera so that it would be a portrait of him in his space. Just like this picture right here. This is not a candid picture because he has stopped and he's looking at the camera and he is being posed in this situation. So a candid portrait, on the other hand, is when you just catch somebody in the everyday experience and it's a portrait of them. However, it's very candid. It's not posed. So this woman looks like she just looked through the bus windows at the photographer and the photographer caught her in this moment. But it was not something like she was actually set up in that way. You could actually set this up if you wanted to, but in this case, it was a candid picture. You can even see there's people walking around. A close-up portrait is when you get really close and you crop out some part of their face. So this one, you can see some photographers use it and in this case, it's a really short depth of field. Couples portrait. This is probably somewhere where you would, if you decided to take up photography for a business, you would probably end up be doing a lot of couple portraits. Couple portraits would be like engagement photos, wedding photos, or any other reason that somebody would hire you to do couples pictures. This unit of study, this is probably the one field that a lot of people go into if they're looking to make an occupation out of photography. People will hire you for a good picture. A group picture, of course, is going to be things like a band picture or anything like that. It's when you have 3 or more people. And you'll see if you ever do wedding photography, you'll be doing a lot of pictures of groups of people. If you could become a band photographer and you could be in charge of following a band around and photographing them. And one of the most famous photographers, if you're thinking about portrait photographer and you want to know the name to go and look for inspiration, Annie Leibovitz is the most popular one. This is one of her photographs. She's an American portrait photographer. She photographed John Lennon on the day he was assassinated. Often did a lot of photos for Rolling Stone, Vanity Fair, a lot of other places. The only woman to have held an exhibition in London's National Portrait Gallery. She is extremely well known. I found the other thing is, she has a wide variety of work. However, she mostly is photographing very famous people. So if you've been photographed by her, it's because you're famous for the most part. But you can see she has a lot of glamour to her work, but it's also kind of raw as well. I'm going to look at some more examples here. I will post this link on Google Classroom, but she uses lighting in a fantastic way. She really uses the environment. And even in a picture like this, let me go back. In a picture like this, she uses the background and you can actually see the background even behind it. So you can see how these are the underpinnings of how this was set up. So she's not afraid to show things off camera as well. She has so much confidence in her work. And you might recognize some of these people in these pictures. But notice how she works with her light. She uses bounce light. She uses diffusion in order to get the beautiful glow. She did this series recently called the Disney series where she had famous people dress up as different Disney characters. Okay, so take a look at her work if you're interested in getting some inspiration for how to do lighting and how to do composition. But that's the vocabulary words for portrait. Next up is still life. Still life, the definition of a still life, is it's a category or a subject matter in which inanimate objects are represented, as in painting or in photography. So here's an example of a still life. So you set up some objects, and it has a long history all the way back to Dutch painting. And you set this up and you take a picture using different qualities of light. So the first word we're going to learn about is a cast shadow. So a cast shadow is the shadow that's created by something blocking a light source. So for example, the shadow of a tree. So right here in this example, in this drawing, the cast shadow is one that is cast onto the ground. The core shadow is the shadow on the object itself. So it's the core shadow would be right here that is on the object. It is not cast onto the ground. It is actually a core. And then we could talk about the highlight. And in this picture, you can see the highlight is the part of the picture that has the most intense light on it. And typically in a highlight, it's usually the glint or the shiniest part, and that's also the direction that the light is shining on. You should see this in your eyes too. If you were to photograph your eyes, you will see a reflection of the light source. You always do have to pay attention to where the highlight is in your picture to make sure, like if this was you're trying to photograph a can of pop and the text was right there where the highlight was, it wouldn't really work. It works nicely on this pepper that's being illustrated, but it would not work nicely if there was text right there. So you have to really always make sure you're finding out where that highlight is falling and if it's in the best place. Next word is composition. We learned about compositional techniques in the previous unit. So you really have to pay attention to how you're working with composition when you're doing still life. Because you have so much time to plan your picture, you need to think about where should the objects be in your picture and what makes the most sense. You also really have to be aware of everything around it and on the surface here too. So every different part needs to work together to create a unified whole. So if you're looking up closely with this picture, you might want to pay attention to how the texture looks here. Does that help the picture or does that hurt the picture? Also, the texture that you see here in this bowl, how is that adding to the picture? And then, of course, the background. Is the black really working? Does this difference between the very light tablecloth work well with the very dark background? You can also see that there's a curved edge here. Does that create tension or is that good? So you really have to think about it. Should there be a straight line going back in this? Should there be a more gray scale picture, tablecloth here? Should this match the tablecloth more? So there's a lot you need to consider when you're working with the composition of a still life. So the background is just the part of the image that is in the back of the picture. When you're doing this project, you really have to focus on the background. The background is very important because it can say too much or it can say too little for your piece. You don't want to have something back here that's going to distract from the foreground. So it all depends on the concept and what you're trying to photograph. Overlapping in still life is this idea that you have some objects in front of other objects. And one of the most famous photographers that we're going to work with historically is Edward Weston. He photographed nature, abstractions. He also photographed close-ups of fruit and vegetables that ended up looking like the human body. Just like this looks like two bodies embracing right here. So I'm going to pull over an image search of Edward Weston's work. He worked in black and white. And you can see some of the close-ups that he did of different fruits and vegetables. This is an example of some still life work that you could be doing for this project as well. And the last one is another photographer. He's a contemporary photographer. His name is Daniel Gordon. And he uses paper, pattern, and vibrant colors in his still life photographs. So his photographs end up looking like this, and he constructs all of these. So he uses flat surfaces and three-dimensional surfaces to create these. So in this, he actually added this fake shadow to the back of the work by just adding a translucent piece of paper or another textured paper to make it look like it was a shadow. So he creates these kind of false narratives in his still life. So let's look at his website. Here's some more examples of his work. So it's almost like you can't tell depth very well because some of this looks like photographs and some of them look like they could be real. It looks like this is a banana that's actually been wrapped with banana printed paper. So you could really mess with some things here. And you can see the bottom, the tabletop is covered by this textured paper, but you can see it's actually just overlapped in different areas. So it gives you kind of a little bit of an optical illusion. Let's look at some more examples. So he's playing with space right here in depth. This is a website that he'll be using that I'll have on your Google Classroom site. So take some time and look at his work and see if it's something that you like. He has a lot of projects here. These are all different projects that he's worked on, and I want you to really experiment with this project.